Today on Broken Lord Order, we get a mod not by paying for it, but by pirating it. Yarrrrrrrrr!
Wow.
Yeah, you like the fancy new intro? The best that $5 can buy. Actually, didn't actually spend any money on it. That's probably why it looks very amateurish. Anyways, today we're taking a look at Nanu's Pirates of Sartosa Overhaul. So I mentioned in the Tomb Kings Doom compilation that the Tomb Kings are one of my favorite factions. Today we look at my other one. Alright, we'll just get going here. So I'm going to pick the Vortex campaign for the Pirates of Sartosa just to keep the turn times down.
I am
Shut up,
Tyrion,
Tyrion.
heir of Anarion.
Anyways, back on track. This makes a ton of mods, sort of what the Doom compilation did. So you've got new units primarily, I'd say, is the focus of this. But there's also new legendary lords and new heroes and stuff added. And we'll take a look at all that in a bit. The one thing that, obviously needs to be said, this only affects the Pirates of Sartosa. So this doesn't affect the other three vampirates. This doesn't affect any of the added in modded vampirates. This is pretty unique to Sartosa, which is nice because I feel like out of all the vampirates, they were by far the least interesting to play in the base game. As the more eagle-eyed among you have already noticed, this basically gives living versions in place of all of the undead versions for all the units. So instead of zombie crews operating a cannon, you've got Sartosan military operating a cannon. Instead of scurvy dogs, you've got warhounds. Instead of rotting Prometheans, you have, well, Prometheans, but they're not rotting at least now. And of course, in place of all the zombies, you have human versions like the Sartosan saboteurs up there. Kind of adds a cool, unique flavor to Sartosa because without the undead aspect, your units don't crumble, they run, and that actually changes the gameplay a surprising amount. So rather than do a replay, I'll just take you along for the ride in our opening battle here. As you can see, we're going up against a couple archers, 3 spearmen, and Levian Reavers, or whatever the hell they're called for the High Elves. Not a bad little force, but you'll see very quickly that having living units instead of zombies pays off pretty damn nicely for the Pirates of Sartosa. Alright, now that we got the battle actually all set up and ready to rock, you'll get to see each of these units in action. I will say, as much as, the human equivalents of zombies are neat and everything, my favorite thing is actually both the monsters and the artillery platforms for the human, or living versions, I guess is the correct term. The Prometheans that you have, you don't have to worry about them crumbling out of existence the second they start to face some stiff competition. Instead, they'll just run away, and on a campaign level that makes a big difference because you're not constantly replacing units. And the cannon actually has some neat tricks, so sort of like the elven bolt throwers, it can choose between a single shot or, in this case, grape shot. The grape shot obviously sacrifices quite a bit of range, just like you'd expect in the real world, and I kind of like that, so even though it's twin purpose, it's not gratuitously overpowered about it. I was a little nervous about starting up. Normally the Reavers tend to pick apart the Vampirates' early units, no problem whatsoever, but holy hell, that Sartosan cannon is just ripping them a new one. So as much as I consider living units to be superior to undead ones from a campaign perspective normally, because it's better to have your units run away than to completely die when their leadership goes down, there is a bit of a downside to it, and that's healing. As you can see, the Sartosan pirates are already about half dead in this battle, and they haven't even got to the enemy yet. And there's no method of healing them for a long ways out yet. In fact, even after we do get a healing option for them in the Priest of Nanu, it still will only heal them, it won't revive any of their fallen. Whereas Invocation of Nehek and Lore of Undeath, I mean, you'd keep your little zombie deckhands going no problem, even from the early game. Alright, let's see if we can quickly wrap this fight up here. Just take out these last little guys, and once we got a mass rout going, it'll be beginning of the end for them. Just take out that lone little archer squadron. So at least that gives you a basic rundown of what your opening unit stacks kind of look like, right? Essentially you're looking at living versions of all your undead options. Changes the gameplay up quite a bit. I'd say the living versions also have a lot better accuracy. My Sartosan cannon never really hit my own guys in fighting, whereas I definitely had things like mortars and carronades hit my own guys with the vampirates, but maybe that's just my mind playing tricks on me. See if we can take out this last little archer squadron here. Oh my god, the saboteurs just explode enemies left, right, and center. Ugh. Why don't we just make full unit stacks of those? Alright, pretty easy win there, obviously. We are going to get into my first sort of issue with the mod now, though, and that's that it still has a weird fixation with vampiric corruption, even though, I mean, the Pirates of Sartosa are more or less made out to be a living faction now. So all the territories you capture will be unhappy with you initially, because you're on untainted territory. But you have living units, and Aranessa is a living captain, and you even have buildings in this that promote untainted, and yet you still don't like untainted. It's not like you're like Archon the Black, where you're okay with a different kind of corruption than what you normally are. They just straight up hate untainted still, and I don't quite understand why they set it up that way. Like, I'm sure you just saw, you do still have vampiric options. Like, the game's not taking away those options, even though I'd be totally okay with them doing so. It's just adding in living options, but in general it seems to really want you to pick the living stuff. I mean, A, that's the whole point of this mod, but also B, the living options that it gives you are far and away more plentiful and focused. Like, most of the legendary lords and all of the legendary heroes are all living, and yet it almost feels like it doesn't want to fully commit to going that route, which is a little bit sad to see, but I guess I understand it from a compatibility perspective, I guess. I'm not quite sure. Just real quick before I wrap up turn 1, I do really like the fact that all of the skill trees and the technology tree and things have been adjusted to account for the living units. A lot of the mods forget that, and I really, really appreciate the fact that it's in here so that the vanilla units don't have all the skills associated with them, while the mods have none. Okay, we're not going to show off the entirety of turn 2, because for about the next dozen or so turns the footage gets pretty dull, as it's mostly me just trying to force vampiric corruption in for my living units to move into. But one thing, pick the Priest of Manon. You have no other healing options outside of him. Whenever you use this mod, don't pick any of the other 3. Go with the Priest of Manon. So I just wanted to take a moment to point out something hilarious that happened. So this was right around the tail end of the first day when I was doing my recordings. As you can see, I got a Gunnery White that got unlocked through an event. Totally normal dude, nothing very interesting to see here. And here's old Arthur the next morning. What the hell? How did he become a Strigoi Ghoul King? Why is he a Strigoi Ghoul King? Why does he still have the same name? Why is he still listed as a Gunnery White? All great questions. I don't really have an answer for what the hell happened here, apart from maybe something must have updated and caused a conflict between last evening and the morning when I recorded this. It was hilarious to me. So, like, this got my curiosity really going, right? Like, where's the line in the sand, right? Tile cards clearly all Strigoi Ghoul King, but then when you click into him, he's still listed as a Gunnery White, and on top of that, he still has the skills of a Gunnery White. So I decided to quickly throw up a battle, just go and check on him, and Jesus Christ, look at him! He's a frigging monstrosity, and not even like the normal monstrosity like a Strigoi. You pretty much hear his character model going, "Kill me!" And you tell Tyrion to shut up one time, and the little elfy prick declares war completely out of the blue on you. What a jerk. Alright, good news. I fixed Arthur Henkel. Look at him go! Boop, boop, ba-doop, ba-doop, ba-doop. And obviously he isn't fixed, but I gotta say this is probably my favorite screw-up I've ever seen. It's so adorable watching him bounce with the Promethean. That's just the last little bit here. As you can see, we got Herrick the Blooded. He's one of the Reaver captains, one of the new heroes added in by the game. This is the legendary one, the one you get from the tech tree. Unfortunately, don't have any footage of him. As you can see, we're already up to turn 50, and, you know, at a certain point I needed to get the footage wrapped up and start on the actual video itself. Alright, we'll just take a real quick dive into the 2 legendary heroes, one of the legendary lords. So first up, we're going to see Stinky Pete. He is a dwarf powder cook, which is essentially the living version of the Gunnery White, not unlike how Harik is the living version of a Morngul. As you can see, he's got a bunch of custom skills and stuff like that, and one of the things I like about all of them is that they all have unique weapons. So whereas Stinky Pete is going between a shotgun versus a rifle, Benny Redbeard here, which is a fleet captain, which is, again, like a living version of the vampire fleet captains, he goes from a straight-up melee-only unit to a ranged unit with that single hand cannon up there. It was a really, really cool thing to see, actually. I'm not sure I've seen that very much in other mods, where you have a complete and total 180 the unit's focus from like just a single skill. And last up, we'll take a look at James Ashley. He is the legendary lord that I get. It's the very first one you unlock. So just like Redbeard, he also has the option to go from melee only to range thanks to a rifle skill. He also has an entire custom line of skills. So for Monkey Jacket, right, all those are unique for him, like the citrus ability, which I thought was awesome. All of the characters that he's added in and with this, it's just been incredibly well done. Very, very impressed with them. Alright, one battle to show off real quick, and it's literally blink and you'll miss it quick. Later in the game, I'm not sure if it's a combination of the improved veterans mod that I have and this one, maybe combining to be a little bit too powerful, but I mean, you can see that the Sartosans basically erase the Dark Shard squad as soon as the battle starts, and like not just routes, eliminates 100% of. I mean, like I said in the Tomb Kings video, yeah, sure, I do these on easy to try and get the footage done as quickly as I can, but I mean, I'm allowed to Vanguard deploy pretty much, I'd say, 3/4 of my army, and then anyone that I tell my ranged guys to fire at disappears literally within seconds, and all of them are Vanguard deployable. That could probably be leashed back a good chunk or so. I mean, you could see like nothing lasts for more than a second or two under direct fire from them. It's a little overpowered. Just from my early playing around with it kind of things, I think the difference is that the living units seem to be significantly more accurate than the Vampire Coast equivalents are, like the undead ones. And so I think that their damage output just goes dramatically higher as a result of that. But I mean, you can see it yourself. It's barely over a minute, and you have a complete and total mass rout with several complete and utter eliminations. Alright, so conclusion time. So earlier I said that I feel like the primary focus was new units that it's added in. I'm actually going to go ahead and contradict myself. I disagree with that now, having spent more time with it. I think the biggest addition of this is the legendary lords and heroes. The amount of love put into each one of them is utterly amazing. They've got little stories behind them that you can read into. There's unique skills that make sense for what they are. They tie into the new units particularly well. Like, they are extremely well thought out. Like, I would say CA quality well thought out. Other things I liked is, of course, those new units that it does add in are very fun to use, even if a lot of them are more or less just reskins. And I also really loved that he was wise enough to touch into the skill trees and the tech trees so that the new units all feel like something that's always been there. Last up, as you can see on this, it says I have 4 conflicts. I don't actually believe them. Weirdly, I do want to note, of those 4 conflicts, I looked into them, none of them have anything to do with Strigoi or Gunnery White, so I have no idea what the hell happened with Arthur in that save. Just chalk it up to Broken Lord Orders being Broken Lord Orders, right? Yeah, like I said, this does tie in very well with other mods. Like I said, those 4 conflicts never actually popped up when I was using it. Only thing I would say is I'd actually recommend not going too crazy with them. I myself have the Vampire Coast Wraiths mod added in, and I felt like I just had too much stuff going on. Like, my unit roster was just colossal, so every single building had like 6 units coming off the end of it. Ended up being a little bit too much of a good thing. I would recommend keeping your subsidiary mods down when you're using this one. So I guess if we're looking for the downsides to this, like I said earlier in this mod, I'm not quite sure I understand why Untainted wasn't given as something that this faction doesn't mind. That would have been the final cherry on top to really make Aranessa play like the living pirate that she is. It would have just been that final little touch. Maybe that'll get changed later, maybe I'm just reading too far into it myself, but again, I feel like this is supposed to be making her more accurate to the lore, which the love for vampiric corruption doesn't really make sense to. On that same note, I would have no problems with him trying to actually get rid of the vampiric units. I know there's sort of a dancing around the issue where the vampiric units are more expensive to hire, to raise, to maintain, but they're not even necessary once you're using this. Like, this makes Pirates of Sartosa feel like a unique faction, so I would just get rid of all of them myself. But then those living units also probably need a slight nerf. I mean, as you saw in that last battle, we're wiping out the enemy in a minute flat. That's a little bit too much damage output. So then for the final conclusion, would I recommend Nanu's Pirates of Sartosa Overhaul? Yeah, absolutely. This should be the kind of mod that becomes a permanent fixture in your load order. put it in there, leave it in there. Even if you're not playing the Pirates of Sartosa yourself, it adds in so much unit variety, even when you're facing them, without being so gratuitously overpowered that it's frustrating to fight them. There's absolutely no downside to having this, and I would hope that it gets tweaked a little bit more in the future, makes it even more interesting to play as the Pirates of Sartosa faction. But this is incredibly well done. I have nothing but good things to say about it. Good job, Nanu. Links for the mod are down below, and I hope to see you all next time. Thanks.